This is Sid Meier's Civilization 5, one of the most consistent, overwhelmingly positively reviewed games in a generation of PC gaming. It's a historically inspired, in fact designed, strategy game where players contest for victory, leading one of humanity's most iconic cultures, or indeed civilizations as it were, through the ages of human history. It's a 4X strategy game, so you expand, exploit, explore, and quite possibly exterminate your way to victory. Not only did Civilization 5 become iconic within Sid Meier's some 30-year, 3-decade spanning game series, but also within strategy, in fact I would argue, all of PC gaming. One of the most fantastic games of all time, and you can see that in its reviews. Today I'm going to take you through why you shouldn't let its 2010 release fool you, some of the different game modes and features of Civilization 5 for those unfamiliar, some of the reasons why its initial release was a little bit lackluster but its DLC has lifted it to greatness, cover some of those specifics, and finally my price and recommendations. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name's Jumbo Pixel, and let's crack straight into why Civilization 5 is probably one of the best strategy games of all time. For starters, as I say, it released in 2010. For a lot of us, that can feel a little bit scary, and for some of us, it might instantly be a turn-off greater than a cold shower, but bear with me, okay? So it had 4 years of fantastic support. It is the second most recent game in the Sid Meier's Civilization franchise, second only to Civilization 6, a much different experience. There was a little spin-off in between there, but we don't talk about that. In Civilization 5, you could split your time between 3 core game modes: single-player scenarios and campaigns, the single-player sandbox mode, and finally, multiplayer. The single-player scenarios and campaigns are more historically inspired than the rest of the game. The single-player scenarios are very specific. They put you in a very specific scenario, i.e. the fall of the Roman Empire. You're playing as the Romans, try not to collapse. The game is restricted within a certain period and certain enemies. These modes aren't bad, and by all means, I'd recommend you try them out. In fact, some of them are a lot of fun, but most players won't spend most of their time playing them. They're good for new players or players looking for a specific historical fix or a specific fix with a certain civilization. However, you'll probably find that you spend most of your time in Civilization, just like I'm doing in this video, playing in what's more of a sandbox mode. In this mode, you start in the year 2000 BC. Unless you want to tweak that in the options, you can actually choose your starting era from 2000 BC right the way up to the modern age. But most of the time you're starting early, exploring a completely open world. A world open for opportunity, filled with threats such as barbarians, non-playable characters, and minor civilizations, but also other major civilizations, these AI players who will be your enemies throughout, or potentially your friends. That's up to you and how you want to play the game. Civilization 5 also has a fantastic multiplayer mode. Now, it is a little bit flawed, I have to admit. If you're going into this game looking for a smooth, crisp multiplayer experience, then you might want to temper your expectations just a little bit. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It can work really well for a lot of people, and there's still a thriving multiplayer community, but some people do report some issues with it, and a lot of players consider Civilization to be primarily a single-player game anyway. Moving on, I have to say, when Civilization 5 first came out, and for those of you who may still be playing just the base game, that's Civilization 5, the vanilla experience without DLC, that version was not ideal. One of the reasons why was because it followed a really popular, fully fledged Civilization 4 that was full of all sorts of features, some of which didn't actually launch with Civilization 5. It felt a little bit blank, and it can still feel that way, particularly for a modern player picking it up now in 2021 or 2022 or whenever you're picking it up and thinking, man, this game's over 10 years old, I need more, and I've come accustomed to more. Well, I've got good news for you. Civilization 5 released 2 significant expansions, God and Kings, followed by Brave New World. These 2 DLCs priced at the same price as the full game, or the vanilla game, really fleshed out the experience. God and Kings introduced 27 new units to the game, 13 buildings, 9 world wonders for you to build, 9 new civilizations that you could play as or against, and some really fundamental game mechanics that modern-day players take for granted. Things like religion and faith, an ability to create your own religion and spread it across the world with various benefits from money to culture to scientific gain and everything in between, even some combat bonuses. God and Kings also introduced spies, adding a little bit more complexity to the mid and late game, allowing you to spy on your opponent and steal technologies for them, among other things. A Brave New World was the second DLC expansion pack for Civilization 5, and I have to say, a really, really great one, and it completed the core Civilization 5 experience, and the one that I'm reflecting on, and that everyone else is reflecting on, when we consider this to be a 9 or a 10 out of 10 experience. Brave New World shifted the way culture works in Civilization 5. For those unfamiliar, the culture victory previously was fairly lackluster. You just got enough culture, you won the game. You built a cultural wonder, and that was sort of it. In Brave New World, instead of building this cultural wonder and winning the game, instead tourism was introduced, a way to influence other players, influence other civilizations with your cultures, until indeed they are buying your blue jeans. What I mean by that is your tourism overtakes their own culture, you become dominant over them. This changed the cultural victory and the entire way that the Civilization franchise was played. Really, really important for Civ 5, and something that was carried through into Civilization 6, I might add. Brave New World didn't just do that, though. It also introduced ideologies, which took basic cultural policies into the modern era. With freedom, order, and autocracy, you could choose how to govern your people, and what bonuses came with that dominant ideological trait. Brave New World also introduced the World Congress, again making the late game, which often is a bit of a drag, kinda boring. Maybe you're being absolutely crushed, maybe you're absolutely dominating. The late game can feel like a drag when the victory feels predetermined. The World Congress was another feature to help reduce that. It added an ability for players to vote and pass certain resolutions, embargoing other players and stopping international trade with them. Another feature that was added to Brave New World, by the way. It didn't have international trade before then, but it did afterwards. The World Congress introduced a raft of features that helped to flesh out not only the late game, but also diplomatic features within Civilization, something which the franchise as a whole isn't quite as good at as some of the more depth, grand strategy games that we see out of the likes of Paradox Studios. Brave New World also, of course, gave us 9 new civilizations to play as, and 8 world wonders to build, among many other changes. All in all, the total Civilization 5 experience, that is, the base game with God and Kings and Brave New World, is a fantastically well-rounded strategy game experience. And while Civilization 5's graphics may look dated, and its Art Deco style menus, features, and text might seem a little dated to some, in many ways, the aesthetics of Civilization 5, the art style, is timeless. Now, that doesn't mean you'll love it. In fact, many people won't. If you're used to a more bright and vibrant Civilization 6 or other game, you might feel like you need some little adjusting to get used to Civilization 5. Likewise with the leader portraits, they may not be up to your modern standards, but as I've said, I feel like, relatively speaking, it has a timeless look and appeal. One thing that isn't timeless about it, however, is its price. The retail price for Civilization 5, just the vanilla experience, is still a whopping roughly $30 on Steam. When you consider that the base game really isn't enough to compete with modern standards or have a fully fledged Sid Meier's Civilization experience, you really do need to pick up God and Kings and Brave New World, which probably means you're going to be picking up the Civilization 5 Complete Edition, which includes those, plus some other spin-off small DLC packs that aren't worth purchasing by themselves, but add some additional scenarios and civs to players to complete the experience. I really would not recommend buying this game at its full retail price, despite singing its praises. That's not because I don't think it's worth that price, because actually, this is a great game, and I could definitely argue that it's still worth that price, but it's because you can get much better value with Civilization 5 given its age and how many people have already bought it and loved it. Quite often, Civilization 5 and all of its DLC, indeed the complete edition, will go on sale for 75 to 80% off. You can pick up the Civilization 5 complete experience for around 10 to 15 US dollars. That's the whole game, the whole experience. If you are interested in any of the following: Civilization 5, Civilization 6, Sid Meier's Civilization, PC strategy games, 4X gaming, or indeed any kind of PC gaming, I really, really strongly recommend you check out Sid Meier's Civilization 5, the complete experience, and grab it on special for really what is only the price of perhaps a couple of cups of coffee. You can have what is truly a timeless classic in PC gaming. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.